Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be making a windshield scraper. Well, depending on where you live, this project may or may not pertain to you. If you are in one of those places like, oh, I don't know, Hawaii or sunny California, a windshield scraper may not be of use unless, of course, you have large birds in your neighborhood. But for me, I live in Canada and we get some pretty brutal winters. And an ice scraper or windshield scraper is one of those things that can just be, you know what, a homemade one could be priceless. So let's start it all off with the material that we're going to use for the blade of the scraper, and that would be some UHMW plastics. Well, here we have the piece of UHMW plastic, and in my experience, you can pretty much treat this stuff like wood. It reacts really well to all aspects of wood, routing, cutting, sanding, you name it. I've turned this stuff. This stuff is awesome. If you're one of those people that really need to know what the acronym stands for, it's ultra high molecular weight. So there you go, UHMW plastic, and this will be our blade. Now, we're making it out of plastic for several reasons. One, it's durable and it won't be affected by any water of the scraping. And as well, it won't damage the window. That's important. It won't leave scratches. So the first thing that we're going to do to this piece, it's 4 inches wide and 10 inches long. It's a little bigger than what we need, but I want to take this one end and we're going to cut it at a 45-degree angle over at the table saw to get the cutting part of our blade. So at this point now we have our 45 cut, and we're just going to lay out our blade. Now you can do whatever you like with your blade. It's your design, it's your scraper, but I am going to make the entire thing 7.5 inches long, just like that. Well, that's not going to show up very well for us on film, is it? And as well, we're going to make the blade itself 4 inches long, and that will make our handle 3.5. So we'll just place some lines across those marks with a square. Once I get one out here, I guess I should have been a bit more prepared. So there we go. There is the base of our blade, and there is the base of our handle down here. Just like that. So we now need to mark out the width of our handle. Now you can do whatever you want with the width of your handle. I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, 1 inch wide? You think that would be comfortable, 1 inch wide? Well, this here is 1 inch wide, I believe, and that feels pretty good. Let me just see how wide that is. Oh, that's 1.25 inches wide. So maybe we'll go 1.5 inches. See, that's how technical this build is. So we're going to go from the center mark here. We're going to go 1.5 inches, which will be 3/4 out from each side, just like that. So we're not really paying too much attention. This isn't really rocket science here. We're just going to have some fun with this project, and you'll see how in just a minute. And then we'll join those lines up together to give us our handle. Just line up our ruler. And there is our handle. That's just sexy, look at that. All right, so now we need to make our blade. And what we're gonna do with our blade is from this edge up here as well, we'll make the center mark right here. I think we're going to want this blade to be 3.5 inches across. So we will just mark that up here at the top so that we know exactly where the end of our blade is. So it's 1.5, 1 3/4 out. And then from here, I think we're going to come out 1/4 inch out from our handle. Just like this. And then we're going to join those marks together to give us our scraper blade. There's one side. And there's the other. Now the total length we want, as I said, was 7.5 inches. We're going to leave this kind of square and bulky at this point in time because we're going to refine it once we get our handle done. So for now, choose your method you want to cut this out with. And I think for my purposes, I'm going to be using the scroll saw. I will cut this tight to the line here. I'm thinking I want to round these corners here, so I will be rounding them. But for this line, for the handle, I want to cut just outside the line. And there we have our scraper blade. So what do we do from here? Well, from here, what we need is some wood for the handle, and that will be 1/4 inch thick. It can be whatever species you like. I think I'm going to use some walnut because I do see a large chunk there that's a scrap over in the wood rack, and I'll probably end up using that. So you're going to need some walnut. That's going to be at least the width of your handle here and the length of your handle. In our case, I'm going to need at least a 4-inch piece by 1.5 inches wide. And it's a little oversized, just like I said. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to resaw some walnut down to 1/4 inch thick. And we need 2 pieces for our handle. Well, I've now used my block plane just to smooth off the 2 sides. And while the cut is not perfect, I did veer off the line a little bit. Stuff happens. I did get enough from this piece of walnut here that it's smooth enough that I can use it for the handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square off each one of these ends, and I'm going to cut about a 4-inch length off of each end for the handle. Well, we now have our wood for our handle cut, and we also have the blade cut, and you can see that we're just going to sandwich this here in between to give us a nice 3/4 inch thick handle. It's now time to cut our handles to rough shape. And again, we're going to use hand tools. I'm actually going to use a fret saw or a coping saw, whatever you want to call it. We're going to mark the end of it to coincide roughly with the end here. And I'm just going to do a circle here. I'm just going to rough cut it. I'm not going to exactly follow the line because I want to sand it to shape afterwards to bring everything together once we get them connected. So for now, we're just going to place our blank on here, and I'm going to trace around where we want to cut it and then round it off with a circle template. Well, the next step that you want to do now that we have this all rough cut here, and I mean rough cut, we're going to take this over to the sander and I'm going to round off the outside edge of this 90-degree cut. Now, if you don't have a belt sander, of course, you can use a file or a rasp. That works just fine. Well, now that we have that shape here at the front leading edge done, it's time to attach our handles to our UHMW. And for that, there's going to be a two-part process here. And the first part is we're going to use some CA glue for our initial hold. Now, that is not going to be the main way of holding it, because once we finish with the CA glue, what we're going to use is these wood rivets. So first, we're going to use the CA glue, carefully position our pieces onto our UHMW blade and clamp them in place and let them dry up. Well, before we carry on with the rivets, what we're going to do is I'm going to take this back over to the belt sander now, and we're going to sand all of this all the way around and shape it to its final shape, bringing everything down to the same plane, making sure everything is nice and even and that it looks good. So let's take that over and get this sanded up. All right, so you can see already how awesome this looks, and we still have a couple more steps to finish it off, and what we're going to do now is get those rivets in place. So I can't tell you what size holes to drill because I don't know what rivets you're using. The holes that I will be doing are specific to these rivets. So with that being said, what I would suggest doing is marking the positions that you want your rivets and then drilling a small, and I mean a small, like a 1/16 of an inch pilot hole all the way through, so that you are now marking which or where the positions of your rivets are going to be on both sides of the handle. Once you get that done, you're going to need to drill the countersinks for the rivets so that they sit below the surface or slightly below the surface of your handle. And once you get that done, of course, all you need to do is drill your through hole, and then using a steel surface like a vise or an I-beam or whatever you have in your shop, hammer these things home so that the rivets pull together to hold that handle in place. Now, truth be told, you can do this just using the rivets, but I like the extra security of that little bit of CA glue in there. It also helps to hold things together while I'm drilling, countersinking, hammering, all of that jazz. So, get the drilling done, the countersink holes, get those rivets in place, hammer them home with your whackometer, and then come back and see me. Well, the last thing for us to do is to give the entire thing a really good sanding. And what we're going to attempt to do by sanding it like this is we are going to round off all of our edges here so that it's not sharp on the hands and we have a comfortable handle to hold on to while we're giving that windshield a good scrape. So give the whole thing a good sanding, including the edges of the blade here. We can just take them down just a little bit. And as well, we probably want to take off this really sharp corner here just so that we don't end up hurting ourselves with it. You don't have to do much, just a little bit of sanding on there just to remove that sharp corner. And then once you get that done, there's really nothing to do other than apply a finish to the wood. I think I'm going to be using a satin varnish and that will go a long way to protecting the wood and having this thing last for quite a number of years. And there you have it. A windshield scraper or ice scraper. Guys, this project was a ton of fun. Really nothing extravagant or nothing complicated, but a good mixture today between power tools like the table saw and the hand tools such as the little crosscut saws, the fret saw, a little bit of work with a block plane and the Ryoba saw as well to resaw the walnut. This could have very easily been done a lot faster and a lot more efficiently with table saw and that sort of thing. And you know what? I just wanted to have a bit of fun with some hand tools today, and that's why I chose this method. If you have the power tools at your disposal and you want to make one of these using power tools, well, why not? Why wouldn't you? Just because I chose a bit of a different method today doesn't mean that the other one is wrong and I'm right. As I've said before, for every process in the woodworking hobby, there's probably about 50 different ways to do it. And as long as it's safe and as long as you're having fun with it, then none of them are wrong. Guys, as much as I am not looking forward to yet another Canadian winter, I am kind of looking forward to putting this into action. I mean, a little hand scraper like this is a great thing to clear off your side windows, your side mirrors, that without, having to get, that big extended one out of the vehicle. And I mean, this is compact as heck. You can just throw it under your seat or in a glove box or what have you. It's not limited to just a Canadian winter, so don't think that just because you don't get snow, it doesn't mean that you don't have a use for one of these. How about a non-marring and non-damaging scraper for defrosting that old fridge? Now, as long as you're not in there hammering and chiseling with this, you're not going to damage any of the coolant lines just by giving this a little scrape once you start the defrosting process. How about out in the shop? A nice little flat, soft blade like this to scrape off the squeeze out on a project once it starts to solidify a little bit. How about, something to scrape excess glue or adhesives off the edge of a project, or a little bit of paper that you may have glued down to a pattern that's giving you a bit of a rough time. How about one of these to scrape that up to get the edge started so that you're not, using a metal one and damaging your product. Guys, there's many uses for one of these. Don't just think it involves snow and ice, and if you're interested, give it a try. If you haven't already, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future shows. And I honestly hope that you're going to join me again when I bring you yet another woodworking video.